everything going on in the past week, it's been insane. This is a Hayden Coker show presented to you by J&K Tire. You can go down to J&K Tire and just mention the Hayden Coker show and get $10 off of any service. This is a Hayden Coker show where we like to talk about football. We like to talk about sports, but mainly now, today, what we're talking about, the early signing period, the winners, the losers, and what's happening with the Florida Gators, because they are on the bottom of the totem pole right now. I thank you so much for everybody tuning into the Hayden Coker show. So just going to recap some stuff that's going on throughout the day. You had Auburn, who had a massive signing day. You jumped to number 7 in the recruiting rankings per on 3. You jumped to 7 in the recruiting rankings. You finished fantastic. That is a really, really great finish to the early signing period for Auburn. You look at Nebraska, they had a good signing period as well. You look at Alabama, they had a good signing period. Nick Saban just etched his 6th straight top 3 class. That's his 6th top 3 class in or 6 straight. And man, he's on fire. He's always going to be on fire as long as he is coaching. I would like to go ahead and mention that. Well, first off, he's the greatest coach to ever coached the game. That's just how it is. That's how it's always going to be. Nick Saban is that guy, and nobody else comes close to it. You can mention Bear Bryant all you want to. It's Nick Saban. All right, it's Nick Saban. The winning percentage is there. The championships are there. He's got the rings. He's got all of it to prove it. So we can just go ahead and lay that out there. But another team from in-state had a fantastic bowl game the other day, and they played phenomenal throughout it. Well, I say the offense played all right through it. Their defense, they did okay through it. And, well, their offense gave up more touchdowns than their defense did. So offensively, Jacksonville State turned the ball over, and it led to 21 points off of turnovers. Now, for Jacksonville State, that's not very ideal. But guess what? You go on to win that game with a true freshman kicker in Garrison Ripa. And like I said, true freshman. He goes in and he hits the game-winning field goal in the New Orleans Bowl in Jacksonville State's first bowl game in FBS history for them. So a big congrats to Jacksonville State. We can go ahead and clap them off. Good job for them. And I think they're going to continue to be great. Well, I say continue to be great. I think they're going to continue to do well throughout the next few years. I do not think that Rich Rodriguez will be there next year, but I think that they're going to eventually be a really good program in Alabama. Now, I'm not saying go out there and win 11, 12 games every year, but I'm saying, hey, look at what Liberty did this year. Look at what New Mexico State did this year. By the way, big shout out to Jerry Keel, head coach at New Mexico State. He did a fantastic job this year. We can go ahead and say that right off the bat. Yeah, I think I said that last week, but I'm not entirely sure. But he did a fantastic job this year. And you have Diego Pavia, the quarterback at New Mexico State, who had a fantastic year as well. And well, have they played? I don't know if they played yet in bowl season. Maybe they have, maybe they haven't. I don't know. I'm not entirely sure. But either way, it's still going to be fun to see some of the other teams who made the bowl season as well. You look at what Western Kentucky was able to do. They go and they have this gigantic comeback, and they end up winning their bowl game. Big congrats to them. So when it comes to Conference USA, we can sit here and talk Conference USA. I'm not a big Conference USA guy, but I'll talk about them all day because I know a little bit about them. They've had a pretty good bowl season so far. If you ask about Saturday about 3 o'clock or about 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock maybe, they were the only conference to be undefeated in bowl season. This is a Hayden Coker show brought to you by J&K Tire. You can go down to J&K Tire in Steele, Alabama. Mention the Hayden Coker show to get $10 off of any service. Are you wanting to reset your vehicle to showroom condition? Well, Tyler Meads at AIM Mobile Detail has got you covered with professional-grade ceramic coatings, paint enhancements and corrections, full interior and exterior details. You can call Tyler Meads now at 256-458-9949. That's Tyler Meads at 256-458-9949, or message him at AIM Mobile Detail on Facebook. Hey, Pell City, are you looking to spice up your morning routine? Well, you can try the Chick-fil-A Spicy Chicken Biscuit, made with a real boneless breast of chicken, seasoned with a spicy pepper blend, and served on a freshly baked buttermilk biscuit. Just for you. You can stop by and enjoy a spicy chicken biscuit in the morning at the Chick-fil-A in Pell City off of Martin Street. Now, so we talked a little bit about Auburn. We talked a little bit about Jacksonville State. That's not usually where we go. We usually don't end up talking about Jacksonville State for that long, for that matter. But now I want to talk a little bit about the signing day and just how much the NIL evaluations have come out to be. So you look on average at how much these schools spend on NIL. You look at how much on average they spend on these players. Well, look, so I did a little research, and this is per On3. This is all credit due to On3 and their website. It's actually really cool. You can go in there, you can see the NIL evaluations, their average NIL spent. So I'm going to start off. I'm going to read you off the top 10 recruiting classes for the 2024 year. Now, coming in at number 10, some may think it's a surprise, some it won't be, but you have Notre Dame, and Notre Dame. They come off I won't say a great season. I'll say a decent season. Sam Hartman, I can definitely say that I could say that I had higher expectations for them at the beginning of the year with how Sam Hartman was playing in the first few games. He lit the world on fire. And toward the middle of the season, he kind of cooled off and didn't really finish the season on a good note. But guess what? They're in the top 10 in the recruiting rankings for 2024. And guess what? They're spending $79 on average now. They're spending $79,000. I'm assuming that is per player. So these players are getting $79,000. This is average, by the way. Of course, people like C.J. Carr are going to get more. That's one of their best players that they've signed so far. So obviously he's going to have more money than some of the other guys. But this is just on average. I'm not reading to you. I'm not reading to you. I'm not going into detail. I'm not breaking down each guy's NIL evaluation. So I'm not just going to do that. But coming in at number 9, we have Oklahoma. And Oklahoma is an interesting school because Oklahoma, they've lost some players. They had some decommits. Then you had Dylan Gabriel. Leave. Matthew Cherry chimes in and says Notre Dame's OC is now the new Troy head coach. I did not know that, Matthew Cherry. I appreciate the information drop there. I didn't know that he was the new head coach. I saw where Summerall had left, thanks to you. So, but yeah, Oklahoma, they spend around $71K on each player. So their average NIL is $71K. Now that is number 9. That is Oklahoma, by the way. You have different guys. You have different teams like Miami, whether it's Alabama, Miami, Auburn, FSU. You have even Texas out there spending a lot of money. Are they cracking the triple digits? Well, if you waited just a minute, and thanks to On3, I can have this information. But if you wait just a second, I'll tell you. Coming in number 8, we have Miami. Miami spends roughly around $77,000 on NIL per player. Then you have at number 7, you have the Auburn Tigers. Now, let's take a minute and let's drop down. All right. So look at number 8, Miami. Miami spends around $77,000. All right. Let's jump to Auburn. Now, Auburn cracks triple digits at $102,000 into their NIL, and I think that is just crazy to me because you look at this is a $20,000 surge, and that's what I think is absolutely insane. Is because you go from that Auburn at $102,000, then you jump to number 6. Number 6 is Florida State. Florida State, a great program, highly touted program, and respected throughout the college football world. Now, I want to show you their NIL. So they spend roughly around $92,000. Okay, but there's more. All right, so jump to number 5. You have the Oregon Ducks at number 5. Now, this can seem crazy to some people, and it seemed crazy to me when I first read it because, one, I don't see how a school can do this and still manage to keep up with the big dogs who are still out there spending, 6 figures, $100,000 on players and stuff. I think it's crazy. Now, this is average once again. You have players going out there. It's not a problem. They hired him Monday, says Matthew Cherry. Thank you, Matthew. So Troy hired their new head football coach, former Notre Dame OC, on Monday. They named their new head coach. So I think it's just crazy to me seeing all the money being poured into the NIL evaluations and the average that they're spending on these players. And then so Oregon kind of shocked me. Oregon, everybody thinks Oregon is, oh well, that's the money grab. That's Nike. That's the money grab. They're going to be spending They're going to be spending loads of money on their players. Well, guess what? They didn't spend as much as any of these other teams that are in the top 5, or they actually spent the least out of anybody, I do believe, or maybe the second least out of anybody in the top 10. Oregon spends roughly $73,000 per player in NIL. Now, I think that is wild. For one, it's Oregon. Like I said earlier, Oregon is a money grab. Oregon, you think Nike. Oregon, the Duck. You think the flashy uniforms. You think, they're spending $150,000 per player. You think, but that's not the case. Matthew Cherry says college football players are getting paid way too much for NIL. Matthew, I absolutely agree. 100%. I don't think it should be this much. But then again, the players, they're going out there, they're getting their bag, and that's them. That's just what they're doing. I'm not going to fault them for doing it, but I will say that, yeah, you're right. These kids are getting a lot of money. And whether that's too much money to ask, I mean, if you ask me, I think so. But like I said, I'm not the one getting the money. I'm not the one giving the money. So I'm not necessarily entitled to comment. I guess I am, but it's not. It's just kind of, you look at it from a fan point of view, and it's like, obviously this was happening years ago. Okay, so now it's legal. Now it's legal, and everybody is getting their fair share. You had the guys like Bo Jackson, who was originally going to go play at Alabama. Then late, he went to Auburn. I don't know if this was true or not, but Auburn made the money talk. It doesn't just happen now. It's always been a thing, but now it's happening more often. You know why? Because one, it's legal, and two, the schools are getting NIL evaluation. Like they have a whole bank for NIL. So I find that very interesting now, how the way that college football is going and the way that it's trending. It just seems that shout out to Justin Lindsay for listening back home. I really appreciate it, man. I think that it's absolutely insane with the amount of money that some kids are getting. They had rumors that Marvin Harrison Jr. was he was getting asked about $20 million just to stay, and that was not true. That ended up just being a rumor, and that is huge, because not only one is that false, but two, that is a huge lie. And no, there's not a college out there right now that's paying over $10 million for a player. I don't even think there's anybody out there paying over $5 million or $4 million, maybe. I could be wrong, but Matthew says it used to happen all the time under the table. Exactly, Matthew, and that's the issue that people are having, because it used to happen all the time under the table. You look at guys like Johnny Manziel. Johnny Manziel, obviously, he got some money to go there, and on top of that, he would sign autographs. He'd get loads of money. They'd fly off of different places on vacation. They'd go out and party all the time. You saw it. Just watch the Johnny Manziel documentary on Netflix, and you'll figure all that out. But it was just insane to see, because, well, you look at where it was and look at where we are now. If I can roll back time and watch college football 10 years ago, I remember watching in 2023, I believe it, or 2014, maybe 13 or 14. I can't remember which one, but it was Auburn, and they had played Texas A&M. At Texas A&M. So it's 2013. So they played at Texas A&M. That's when they won that game. They beat Johnny Manziel at one of the last plays of the game. They sacked Johnny Manziel in the backfield for like 20-yard loss, and that ended the game and would eventually lead to Auburn's victory. So during that time, I remember watching, and I was at a party not at a party, but I was at one of my buddies' parties. And keep in mind, this is 10 years ago. This is not a birthday party now, so don't get your heads twisted. But 10 years ago, I was at one of my friend's birthday parties, and we were watching the game inside. We watched that game end. Now, watching that game then, and obviously he had the Money Manziel, the signature celebration. That was happening. It may not have been I'll say it may have not have been highly documented. It may not have been talked about at the time. It is definitely talked about now. For one, the documentary kind of put it all out there, but it's also something that it just makes you think, because where we were 10 years ago and where we are now is just astronomically different, and it's insane. It's insane to me. It's insane to a lot of college football fans out there. I find it interesting. I find it cool to talk about, cool to think about. How have we grown so much over this certain time? On Three, who is not a thing 10 years ago, I do not believe. Anyways, this is On Three is a newer website and a newer newer media station. So it's like it's just wild because these NIL evaluations, they weren't a thing, and nobody was talking about, hey, we're going to make this legal. It was always an issue. One, because they stopped the college football game for it, and they stopped mentioning players' names because of the NIL situation, and it just wasn't talked about as much as it used to be. Justin Lindsay says, besides Shadur Sanders, which I don't think it counts because his dad's famous, Arch Manning is the second most paid athlete with $2.8 million. And Justin, you're right. Shadur is getting paid a lot, and yeah, his dad is very rich. Dion, I saw an interesting video the other day, and it was a former athlete at Colorado. He was a football player, and he said that Dion said that he pretty much just wasn't good enough to play. And he shook both the other coaches' hands while he was in the meeting room, shook both other coaches' hands, and he went to shake Dion's hand, and Dion pointed to the door and said, yeah, have a go. And so I just – that is a whole different story and a whole different topic to talk about. And I've questioned the integrity of Dion. I mean, obviously, I think he's a decent dude. I think he's a decent dude and a good Christian man. But I just don't necessarily know what all is going on over there. So I don't know. It just, to me, I can't sit here and firmly say that I think that Deion Sanders is going to be a top 5 head coach in the next few years, because he's not. It's just not going to happen. I'll give him this. He can recruit like crap. He can recruit like crazy. That's why they are where they are today. And you look at where Deion was a few years ago, coaching in Jackson State, and then you look at the bag that he got dropped to go, the bag that he got offered to go coach at Colorado. He's doing some really big things, and I got to give the guy credit. And he is going to recruit. He's going to get those good players, and he is going to be successful. Now, whether that is successful on the football field or not, I don't know. I don't necessarily think so. But he's going to recruit, and he's going to get some of the good players. Now, obviously, they went out. He reestablished that offensive line. He's already done that. He's already hit the portal and got some of those guys. Their former 3-stars. I saw a former 4-star in there, right tackle. So it's really interesting to see all that going on. But I want to kind of come back to earth here and talk about the top 5 when it comes to our NIL evaluations and recruiting rankings. Coming up at number 4, we have Texas at $128,000. Wow. You look at that and you think, wow, that is a huge jump from number 5, Oregon at $78,000 or $73,000. That's just crazy. Well, guess what? That is a big jump from there. That is also a big jump from number 10, Oklahoma at $71,000, and number 7, Auburn at $102,000. There, it's just a big difference. Coming in at number 3, you have Ohio State at $133,000, and then at number 2, you have Bama at $130,000. So these guys are all dropping the money for these players. Then you have Georgia sitting at number 1 in the On 3 2024 recruiting rankings, paying on average $127,000 per player in NIL. So I think it's crazy. I think it's wild. I think it's fun to talk about because, one, we're getting these numbers in. We're getting to compare these numbers and see where all they're going. But not only is it that, you look at these guys who are losing recruits. I'm going to jump into this next after I read a few ads and stuff. But I'm going to jump into this next. You have teams like Florida who kind of fell off. You have teams like Florida. You have teams like, Tennessee. Tennessee's not having the best recruiting cycle. So teams like Missouri, who's having a great recruiting cycle, they're doing really well. They're doing really well as well. So, and plus they hit the portal hard. They got the number 1 offensive tackle in the portal, and I believe his name was Michael Green. I'll get to that in a little bit. But you look at that and you think, wow, these guys are actually doing something really cool. And you look at the Missouris of the world. You look at the Floridas of the world. The Florida, they were number 2 in the nation at one point, and now they're sitting at number 16. So you look at the fall. You look at the drop off. You got DJ Lagway, one of the 5-stars that ended up staying, and then you have LJ McCray, another 5-star. Or that's two of their only 5-stars that stayed. You had a few other 5-stars committed there as well that ended up flipping. I think you had one go to Miami. You had one go to Texas. So it's really interesting to see, and I'm going to get into that a little bit later. But first, I'm going to pay the bills as always. So, hey, Pell City, are you looking to spice up your morning routine? Well, you could try the Chick-fil-A chicken biscuit made with the real boneless breast of chicken, seasoned with a spicy pepper blend, and served on a freshly baked buttermilk biscuit just for you. You can stop by and enjoy spicy chicken biscuit in the morning. That is at the Pell City, the Chick-fil-A in Pell City, right there off Martin Street. If you're going to Pell City from Asheville, it's right there on the right. You turn right, and then you turn into the parking lot. Are you wanting to reset your vehicle to showroom condition? Well, Tyler Meads at AIM Mobile Detail has got you covered with professional grade ceramic coatings, paint enhancements and corrections, and full interior and exterior details. You can call Tyler Meads now at 256-458-9949. That's Tyler Meads at 256-458-9949, or message AIM Mobile Detail on Facebook. Matthew Cherry says A&M has been paying their players to come there. Jimbo Fisher started it. Yeah, and that's something else we can talk about, because Jimbo Fisher, the money that was said, and this is all hypothetical, or I would say hypothetical, but this is all rumors. And well, it was also said by Evan Stewart. I don't know how much I can trust what a college player is saying now, though. But I will go ahead and talk about it. Evan Stewart said, all the money that was being poured into NIL and all the money that was apparently being offered. Well, Evan Stewart come out and claimed that that money, he never received an ounce of that money in the first semester that he was there. Now, I don't know what happened to that money afterwards, after that first semester. If he got it, if he did it, that's not on me. I don't necessarily know it. All I know is that Texas A&M, they fire their head coach Jimbo Fisher. You bring in Mike Elko. You're gonna have transfers. You're gonna have decommits. That stuff's gonna happen when you get a new head coach. It's just gonna happen. We can all agree with that. But when you have players at the magnitude that they are transferring out, let's use Walter Nolan for example, and he is, by the way, crystal ball to Ole Miss now. It is down to Ole Miss and Oregon for Walter Nolan, who was the number one defensive tackle in 2022, coming out of high school, who was at A&M last year. Now he's transferring out. Well, guess what? There's a good possibility that Ole Miss lands him, and we can talk about Ole Miss for a little bit if you want to, because you know why? They're going to make the playoffs next year, barring any injuries. They're a really, really, really good football team. They're returning a lot of talent. Jackson Dart's going to be the quarterback there for another year. So Ole Miss is returning talent. It's going to be fun to watch. It's going to be fun to see. You look at what Ole Miss has going into next year. You look at what they're going to be able to do. Now I'll have to pull up their schedule. I can do that here in just a little bit if you'd like me to. But guys, I'm sitting here looking at Ole Miss's roster, and there is no way that fully healthy this team does not make the 12-team playoff next year. For one, guess what? It's a 12-team playoff. I just said it. It's 12 teams. There's more teams. There's more opportunity. You're looking at 3 to 4 SEC teams making it next year. You look at Missouri. I think Missouri is going to be another team to look out for next year. But I don't know if Brady Cook is going to be back next year. I know he's not going to be back next year. He's in his 5th year at Missouri this past year. He will not be back next year. So it's going to be interesting to see who steps into that quarterback role. Are they going to hit the portal? Are they going to get some kid out of high school? I don't know. Are they going to have some kid that was sitting behind Brady Cook for some years? I'm not entirely sure. That's all going to be that is all TBD. I do not know, and we will see how that goes in 6 or 7 months. Like I said, I don't know right now, but it's going to be once summer comes around, we really start to figure out who these guys are going to be. We really start to see who these guys are going to be at media days, whether it's whether it's spring practice. It's going to be fun, and that is when we're going to start to everything's going to be revealed, and we're going to see who is actually going to be playing in these certain spots. Matthew Cherry says, from what I hear, Alabama football is getting several Texas A&M players from the portal, and you're right, because Alabama landed the former defensive tackle at A&M, LT Overton, and that was a big pickup for Alabama because, well, you need some help at the defensive tackle position. Guess what? You got it, because he was one of the best players in his class coming out of high school, and he's a really good football player anyways. So him coming over to Alabama really helps Alabama out. Justin Lindsay says, all right, kid, wake up. I'll join whenever I get him some food. If you're I do want to say real quick before I jump into my next segment. One thing crazy, and this is what's going to lead into it. Florida's fall has been something that needs to be recorded and documented, because you go from the number 2 recruiting class in the nation to the number 16 recruiting class. Look at this. So you have guys like Isaiah Williams who decommits. Here's a wide receiver who went from Florida to A&M. You have a Darius Hayes. He was a linebacker. He goes from Florida to Miami. You have Xavier Phil. I can't say his last name. I think it's Phil Same. Guess what? He's going to Texas now, and he was the 5-star safety coming in. So guess what? Now he's gone. Then you have a defensive lineman, Amaris Williams. Guess where he's at now? He's at Auburn. Auburn finished with that number 7 recruiting class in 2024. So, well, as of right now, anyways. So Florida's downfall right now is you look at it and you just think, wow, because it shouldn't happen. It should not happen at all. But it's something it's just something that's going to happen. You're in a new age. You're in a new era. You have NIL. Money can sway kids, and these kids are very young. Everybody knows that, and people are going to have to start realizing that. These are not 28-year-old adults. These are 18-year-old kids coming out of high school, 19-year-olds, 20-year-olds hitting the portal. So these are not the most mature kids. You know, some kids are going to see that biggest number and say, hey, you know what? I want that, not necessarily where they're actually going. Now, obviously, that's going to come into play, and they're going to say, hey, you know what? I didn't go here for the money. Obviously, like Travis Hunter, I think we all know why he went to Jackson State a few years ago. And obviously, you have Deion coaching there, former NFL player, a fantastic NFL player, Hall of Famer. But the money talks, and he's not going to go to Jackson State over Florida State just because Deion's there. I think money definitely had something to do with it. Now, he can sit there and claim it doesn't, but I just don't simply agree with that. Matthew Cherry chimes in and says, Florida Gators football deserves a new coach. Billy Napier is destroying the program. Now, Matthew, I would like to chime in and say this, because Billy Napier got that program to the number 2 recruiting class in the nation. Now, they also fell back to number 16. So he got them there, but he wasn't able to maintain that possession. So it's just like a wide receiver catching a football and landing out of bounds. If you say he lands out of bounds or lands on the ground and the ball rolls loose, kind of like the game, Alabama and Georgia game. Some people say it was a catch. I don't think it was a catch, but guess what? I still think that Alabama would have won that game no matter what. And guess what? Alabama is one of the best teams in the country. Alabama's probably going to go on to win the national championship. You didn't hear that from me, but that's something that we can talk about a little bit later. Now, can Billy Napier, can he maintain this good roster? Can he keep it with him? Because you have a really, really, really tough schedule coming up in 2024. You've got Miami on the schedule. You've got all the Florida teams, Division I. You have UCF, Florida State, Miami. It's going to be tough for them. I don't know if USF is on there or not, but they may be possibly. I'm not entirely sure. But they've got a really tough schedule ahead for them. And plus, you have Oklahoma and Texas joining the SEC. It's just getting harder. It's just getting harder and harder and harder. And if Billy Napier can't adjust within the next few years, then I can definitely see him being gone. And that is inevitable if he can't get it turned around real quick. So that's just inevitable. Like I said, if he can't get it turned around, he's going to be gone. But I do think that Billy Napier brings some really good things. I think he's a really good offensive-minded coach. But the problem is they just can't get things done on the road. That's what they did this past year. You look at what they did against Kentucky. Absolutely blown out of the water. I thought Florida was going to win that game. They were looking good early on. Or excuse me, not early on, but they were looking good in the previous week when you beat Tennessee. Then you go to Kentucky and Lexington. You play in that field. I think it's Kroger Field or something like that. And then you just get the doors blown off of you. That's just not how people cheering for Florida football is going to go. It's just not. So I can definitely see what you're saying, Matthew. Give him another year. If you want to give another 2 years, go ahead. But I don't think that Billy Napier right now seems to be the answer. But I will go ahead and give him credit. They have been doing a really great job of recruiting. They just can't seem to maintain that number 2 spot that they had earlier on in the year. Now let's jump to Alabama real quick. You look at what Alabama was able to do in over the past few years. Obviously, for the past 6 years, they've had a top 3 recruiting class. This is 6 straight years they've had a top 3 recruiting class. Nick Saban has outdone himself. Absolutely, it's not even close. But obviously, you go out there and you sign Julius Sayet. You sign LT Overton from A&M. You sign Jalen Mbakwe from Clay Chalkville, the cornerback. Guess what? He's a 5-star too. And then you have Caleb Odom, the 4-star tight end, coming in as well. Matthew, I'll get to your comment here in just a second. And then, so with this being his 6th consecutive top 3 class, it just makes people wonder. People were saying this past year when they lost to Texas in week 2, and then they had a really bad game against USF. Oh man, Saban's done. Alabama's done. This is not the Alabama team we've seen in past years. And you're right. At the time, it wasn't the Alabama team that we were used to seeing. But guess what? It's Nick Saban, and Nick Saban is always going to find a way to get to the end of the regular season with a really good record. If one or two losses, you look back at the 2010 team when they lost 3 games, that was still a top 10 team in the country with them losing 3 games. They just were, plain and simple. I'm sorry, you can argue with the wall. They were. Matthew Cherry chimes in and says, I feel Travis Hunter went to Jackson State and then to Colorado Buffalo's football from the money that he got from Deion Sanders' pocket. It's crazy seeing what Travis and his girlfriend are driving. Yeah, so Matthew, that's also interesting to talk about because you look at what obviously they're posting on social media. It's a new age. People are going to be posting all their stuff on social media, the car that they're driving, what they're living in. And I don't know their living situations, living on or off campus or not. But I will say though, Travis Hunter, he does a good job of doing stuff on his own as well. He has a podcast with Bleacher Report that he does. And but yeah, I do think that NIL comes with that. And you look at what Shadur Sanders has, Shiloh Sanders, Dylan Edwards, the 5-star running back who was coming out of high school, and guess what? He's coming back next year. He's just going to be a sophomore. He's really good. So you look at what all these guys are getting. Obviously, Travis Hunter as well. I think they're definitely getting a buttload of money. But so I don't think that they can sit there and deny that at all. And I think they know that. And probably one-on-one when you're talking to them, yeah, they'll definitely say, yeah, I kind of got that, but they're not going to say that on camera, obviously, because one, at colleges they media train now. They media train. Obviously they got to do interviews and stuff, so they're going to train them for that kind of stuff. They're not going to mention too much about money, anyways. So, but yeah, back to Alabama. You have another star-studded class. You finished with the number 2 recruiting class in the nation. Well, right now, anyways. I realize it's not over yet, and anything goes, and it'll always go and always be like that. But you've got some of these other players. You've got Ryan Wingo, the wide receiver, 5-star. Guess where he's going? He's going to Texas. You've got some different guys going to Auburn. Guess what? You have DeMarcus Riddick, who, by the way, was a 5-star linebacker before he decommitted from Georgia and committed to Auburn and eventually signed with him. Guess what? When he committed to Auburn, he was bumped down to a 4-star by 247. So I just don't necessarily know why that is necessarily. Obviously, they're not going to do that to guys like Cam Coleman or Perry Thompson or Ryan Williams. They're not going to do that because those are really good wide receivers. Now, DeMarcus Riddick, on the other hand, it just seems like defensive players aren't shown as much respect in when it comes to being evaluated with stars or whatever you want to call them. Matthew Cherry says teenagers shouldn't be driving high-end cars. I'm happy about the Alabama football team flips. They got lucky. They got today. Matthew, I'm going to sit there and say this. They got some. I didn't think that they were going to get LT Overton, and that wasn't really on my radar a few weeks ago. But looking at it now, I think it's going to be a great fit. I think LT brings a lot to the table. Now you look at Julian Saban. Julian Saban, obviously, he's going to sit behind Jalen Milroe for next year. Jalen Milroe had a near Heisman season this year, and possibly he could even win it next year. And guess what? I think he might. He's obviously the favorite right now, but you're going to have guys like Dylan Gabriel who are up there. So they're going to be competing for it also. And by the way, he's really good at football. If you didn't know, it's going to be interesting to see. It's going to be fun to watch. And we're all going to find out next year. And you look at the star-studded players coming in, star-studded players going out. You have Arch Manning, who's going to be sitting behind Quinn Ewers for next year. Quinn Ewers, another guy who could go in the Heisman. So I'm excited. And you look at another guy, Dylan Raiola, who flipped his commitment from Georgia and signed with Nebraska today. And obviously, I mentioned it. I think I mentioned it last week, maybe. Maybe not. But so real quick, I'll go ahead and mention that. Dylan Raiola, his dad played at Nebraska, was taken in the second round, I believe, in the 2001 NFL draft or 2000. I can't remember. But and his uncle coaches at Nebraska, so that makes a little bit more sense. He was at Nebraska games on recruiting trips for a while. He would always go there. He'd go there a lot. So that's just another guy to look out for. He's going to be good next year, I think. I'm not saying win the Heisman good, but I think he's going to be good next year. Missouri, they got Caden Green, not Michael Green. Sorry, I butchered that earlier. They got the number 1 portal offensive tackle in Caden Green. Guess what? He's in Missouri now. He but he transferred from Oklahoma to Missouri. Missouri's doing some really good things. You also get 4-star wide receiver Courtney Crutchfield. He's going to be really good next year. I do believe. Now whether he's starting or not, you still got Louis. You still got Theo Weiss Jr. coming back. You have Luther Burden coming back. Now who's going to be at the quarterback position? We don't know. You're going to have the Georgia State transfer coming in to play running back. He's good as well. So I think Missouri's going to be really good next year. Now the big question is, who's going to play at that quarterback position? What's going to happen on the defensive side of the football? The defensive line, it was good this year. It wasn't as good as past years. You look at the year where they played, they took Auburn to the wire. That was a really good defensive line. Now, I'm not saying that it was going to go out there and just compete with anybody at Georgia's defensive line, but it was a really, really, really good defensive line. You look at Jeremiah McClellan, flipped from Ohio State to Oregon. He's going to be good. 4-star wide receiver. You got Robbie Ashford, who's entering the transfer portal. I think it's a good move for Robbie. I don't think he was going to play. Matthew, like you said, you have KJ Bolden, who flipped from Florida State to Georgia, the 5-star plus per on 3. So that's really fun there. You have Juice Wells. Guess where he's going? He's going to Ole Miss. You have Aiden Childs. Aiden Childs is the backup quarterback to DJU out of Oregon State this past year. He's going to Michigan State. You have Grayson McCall going to NC State. You have Riley Leonard going to Notre Dame. So, guys, I cannot mention enough of these players. They're good. Tyler Van Dyke, one that I'm not necessarily sold on, and Grayson McCall either. I'm not necessarily sold on him. I don't think he's that great. And just like Tyler Van Dyke, I don't think he's that great either. And Tyler Van Dyke is going into a Wisconsin situation where you're having Tanner Mordecai leaving at the quarterback position. He's not going to be there next year, and he spent most of his time at SMU, and then he was at Oklahoma first and transferred to SMU. Now he's at Wisconsin. That's just a rough situation. I don't think that is going to be that offense really, really, really needs some help. If Tyler Van Dyke can go in there and sling the ball around, that's good for him. You have running back for Wisconsin, Ches Malusi, returning. So he just announced that he was going to return for his final year at Wisconsin. So that's really good for Wisconsin. You've got guys returning. You've got guys flipping. You've got guys hitting the portal. You've got guys decommitting. So it's interesting and it's fun to watch. You also have Armando Blunt. He went from Florida State to Miami. So Miami pulling a little Mary Flipmas there. Auburn pulling a little Mary Flipmas there. Now come February, we're going to see about Ryan Williams. Where's he going to go? Is Auburn going to pull another flip from Alabama, or is Alabama going to keep him and him sign with Alabama? We're going to find out that later on and on into next year. But we've got a lot to cover right now. We've got bowl games coming up. Plus, I got to eat some supper because I'm really hungry. Hey, Pell City, are you looking to spice up your morning routine? Well, you can try Chick-fil-A spicy chicken biscuit made with a real boneless breast of chicken, seasoned with a spicy pepper blend, and served on a freshly baked buttermilk biscuit just for you. You can come by and enjoy a spicy chicken biscuit in the morning at Chick-fil-A in Pell City. Also, whether you want to cater your food for a Christmas party, you can go see Chick-fil-A as well. Also, you can go over to the Chick-fil-A. You can go over to the Chick-fil-A Pell City Facebook page, and you can see the really cool rendition of "Rocking Around the Christmas Tree." It's called "Rocking Around the Nugget Tray." So they redid a song. It was really cool. A good friend of mine, Cody Miller, was in that song, and some of my fellow employees as well. So you really need to go watch that. It's on the Chick-fil-A Pell City Facebook page. You can go and watch that. Getting some of these bowl games and some of the opt-outs as well. I want to get to the opt-outs. Brooks Stevens Jr., thank you for tuning in. Bama weapons are going to be ridiculous next year. Man, you're correct. He will. My stepson plays with Sarah Land. He's just taking his visits. I got you. So Brooks, and I want to hear a little bit more about that. So tell us who your son is, what position he plays. We can give him a little credit as well. Who he plays for at Sarah Land. So you look at guys like Jaden Daniels. He's going to opt out this year. You look at Nehemiah Pritchett and DJ James. Those are some really, really good players who play for – or those are some players who are really good at Auburn. They're defensive backs, obviously. There's, I believe, DJ James was a senior anyways. And Nehemiah Pritchett, he was in his 5th year. So – and I could be wrong on those, but I'm pretty sure that is correct. They're opting out. And then you also have Salia Tagovailoa as well, who is opting out of the bowl game versus Auburn. So that kind of does it for me. I think that kind of solidifies a spot for Auburn to win that game, or solidifies the decision anyways. I think Auburn will win that game. But I definitely think that it's going to be an interesting game overall. It's going to be played on the 30th, I believe, like 12 o'clock or so. So I think it's going to be a fun game to watch. It's going to be in Nashville. So it's going to be a fun game to watch, but I think Auburn eventually comes out with that game. Now I want to get some of the other bowl games coming out tomorrow. You have the Boca Raton Bowl, and you have USF and Syracuse played. Now Syracuse, obviously, they fired their head coach. Now you hire Fran. I can't remember his last name. Morris, maybe. I think Fran Morris was the name. I could be completely wrong on that. But I'm not entirely sure there of his name, anyways. But you have Kyle McCord, who's committed to Syracuse. He's going to be playing there next year. I think that USF is probably going to win this game. Syracuse is favored by 3. I think that USF wins. USF have their guys. Okay, they have guess what? They still have a head coach who's been there for a year already. This is a new head coach. He's working with new players. I'm not entirely sure if he's even going to be on the sideline for this game. So I'm going to go with USF in that game. Coming up on the 22nd. Now, you don't have a game on the 21st, but on the 22nd in the Gasparilla Bowl, you have Georgia Tech playing at UCF. That's going to be a fun game. I think that Georgia Tech is a little bit underrated. You look at how they played Georgia. They did a really good ball. They did a really good job of running the ball. Haynes King was able to throw the ball a little bit and kind of dice up those DBs at Georgia. I think that Georgia Tech is a really good football team. Now, you look at UCF on the other hand. This is also a really good football team. And you look at John Rice Plumlee. John Rice Plumlee is a really good guy. And he's a really good player. And multi-sport athlete. He's not playing baseball in the fall because he's going to focus on the in the spring because he's going to focus on the NFL draft. I think that John Rice Plumlee and his company are going to come into this game with their hair on fire. Now, do they win this game? I'm not entirely sure. I think this is going to be a close one. It's going to be a good matchup. I think that UCF is a really good team. I think that Georgia Tech is a really good team. This is one of those games that I've tossed up, and I really just do not know who's going to win. Or did not before I started recording. But I've come to the conclusion that I think this UCF team is a lot more experienced than this Georgia Tech team. Therefore, I think that UCF is going to get the job done. Now, I think it's a close game. Georgia Tech takes it down to the wire, but I think that UCF eventually gets the job done. Now, going into the next game, in the Birmingham Bowl, we have Duke versus Troy. This game is going to be played on Saturday. Now, you look at what Duke has been able to do this year. Duke is a really good football team. Well, I'll say really good football. Duke is a decent team. Now, look at what Troy. Both of these teams have lost their head coaches. All right, well, Troy lost their head coach to Tulane and John Summerall, and then, Mike Elko, Duke's head coach, he's over at Texas A&M now. So both of these guys have lost their head coaches. But what is going to happen in this game? I think that Troy now, I think Duke is actually favored in this game. I could be wrong on that. I think Duke is favored. But I think that Troy is going to come into this game, and I think they're going to win. I think that Troy wins this game. I think they're going to be able to play some hard-nosed football. They're going to run the ball. They're going to dominate running the ball, and I think that they eventually get the win. Now, like I said, hard-nosed football. This Duke defense is very good, but I think that Troy ends up eventually getting the W. Now, our last game for this stretch, for this little slate. So on the 23rd, we have Utah and Northwestern playing. This is going to be on Saturday in the Las Vegas Bowl. Utah, I think that Utah is a really good team. Northwestern, their new head coach has done a really good job in his first year. He's got them to a really good record from what they were at last year. Last year they were 2-10. This year they get to 6 wins. So that's really good for Northwestern. I just don't think that Northwestern is to that caliber yet, and therefore I think that Utah is more than likely going to get this game. Matthew Cherry says Duke versus Troy is going to be a really good bowl game. I agree. Brooks Stevens chimes in and says Matthew Cherry, especially with all the lawsuits trying to get them in the playoffs, seems like Florida lawmakers care more about the FSU players or care more than the FSU players. Now, and I can kind of agree with you on that one. I think it's kind of crazy that all the lawmakers and stuff. Riley Leonard transferred and John Summerall left for Tulane. Yes, sir, exactly. So I think it's going to be a good one. Both teams are without their head coaches. Duke is going to be without their starting quarterback and Riley Leonard. So it's going to be a fun bowl slate. Now, whether I get these games right, I don't know. But if you want to participate in my bowl challenge and participate and possibly win something, I'm probably not going to do anything. But if you want to win, if you want to try and win, you can beat me possibly. And Bowl Mania, you can go on my Facebook page. You can scroll down a couple posts and you can see that. Click on the link and you can join my Bowl Mania, and we can see who wins there. Now, Matthew Cherry says, "I'm with you. Utah is going to win." Yeah, Matthew, I'm on the same page. yeah, that's just how I'm feeling right now. I don't think that Northwestern is quite there yet, but I do think that they're on the up and coming. I'm not saying they're going to be a 10-2 team within the next few years. I'm not saying that at all, but I do think that they can be really good, decent anyways. Get the 8 wins next year. That'd be really great for the new head coach as well. Get some confidence out of those guys. Guess what? Pat Fitzgerald is not there anymore, guys. This is a new era for Northwestern. And yeah, this has been the Hayden Coker Show presented to you by J&K Tire. You can go down to J&K Tire in Still, Alabama. Mention the Hayden Coker Show to get $10 off of any purchase or service. And guys, thank you for watching. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for commenting. Thank you for interacting with me. I highly appreciate it. And I expect to see you guys next week. So Brooks Stevens says Utah is my dark horse playoff pick next year if Cam Rising stays healthy. And yeah, Brooks, I like that. Pick. I think Cam Rising is a really good football player, and Utah seems to always be decent on the defensive side of the football. You've got a really good defensive-minded coach, and always forgetting his name. Wow, that doesn't shock me. Dillingham, sorry. But you've got a really good defensive-minded coach in him, and I hope you have a Merry Christmas. Thank you, Matthew, and I will be back next week. Merry Christmas, guys, says Brooks. Thank you. I will be back next week. Possibly we're shooting for Tuesday, maybe. We'll shoot for Wednesday. I'm not entirely sure yet, but I hope you guys have a Merry Christmas. Deck the halls. Y'all have a good one, guys. And don't forget the true meaning. And this is not about actually just giving presents, obviously, but I hope you guys remember the true reason for Christmas. Y'all have a great one, and I will see you guys next week. Merry Christmas.